Hey folks, it's Phil, the miniature model maker, coming to you today with some 40K stuff. I am still doing background work on the Gundam artifacts and wanted to do a bit of work on my Chaos Space Marine army. So I thought I'd pull out my Cultists of the Abyss. These guys are part of, well, a full army, but are the mainstay of a boarding patrol, since that's now my new favorite and preferred way to play. I've got a box of the normal cultists built the other day. Some of the accursed cultists, which I don't have the box. And then I've got these two boxes of these that have been sitting in my closet for years. And it's time to pull them out. So I'm going to take a second here and show you what I've done so far. Firebrand, So, yeah, there's the Firebrand. It's a pretty neat model. These guys are all right for push fit. Then the Champion, and 3 of the regular cultists from this box. And then I've already got the Accursed Cultist one done. So these guys were interesting to build. I now see what all the people are talking about with the way the models are being designed with high detail, low part count, and the sculpting on them, the model design being like a puzzle. Some of these pieces, some of the things on these guys, like you had to bend it and twist it and arrange it, and it makes a really nice monopose model thingy figure, but they're really in some ways challenging to build, and I can absolutely see now why people are having issues kit bashing. They're sculpted so specifically for their one thing to get all that detail and cool looks that you really now it's a lot harder to do any sort of customization on them at all. So I see that, but yeah, thankfully I only got one box of these guys. So the 3 of them are done, as well as all the other Cursed Cultists that go with it. There's one more somewhere. These regular cultists here, woo! Cheap guys. These were fun to build. They're just like 3 parts shoved together. Worked out all right. They'll get taken off the table fairly quickly. But yeah, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the cultists, maybe 9. I kind of built one, and now I can't find all the parts for it. They're in one of the boxes somewhere. So eventually I'll have a full box of 10 of the regular cultists. Why 8 of these guys though? I don't know. And then this squad of accursed cultists and torments. And then it's going to be another a 7, 13. If I double up on the champion and make it just a regular plain cultist, I'll have one more cultist than I currently think I have. But if I don't, that means the Blackstone Fortress boxes are only going to give me 6 cultists because the firebrand and the champion don't count. So if I want to do the full 30 cultists for the boarding patrol, the uprising, the lower deck uprising, I think it's called, I'm going to have to get another box of cultists or go on eBay and see if I can find somebody selling just a few. Oh, maybe there'll be some sort of cool Necromunda gang that would look appropriate and fit the bill for just generic chaff cultists that'll get taken up pretty quickly. But yeah, that's where we are. And today I'm going to finish up this sprue of them. I think there are 4 left on here. And the other box that I had, I did just get out of a pretty big job interview. Wish me luck. It's a very good job, well suited for me at the local university. So that's exciting. And now, here we are. And we are working on 7 I did. So this guy here. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. All right. Thankfully, these ones are organized fairly well in sequential order generally, which is nice. I guess they do that with the push fit models to get the people who are new to everything enthused about building the kits, and then find out that later in the quote unquote big boy 40K stuff, all the parts are spread across multiple sprues. They don't want to frustrate everybody before they get them hooked, right? But yeah, about the interview, my throat's going to be a bit scratchy today because I've talked a lot already, and now I need to distract myself from that second guessing and overthinking and all that. Oh well, that answer was, I did that answer pretty well, but if I had said it in this way, it would have been even better. Have to avoid all of that evil brain stuff going on. Because it sure would be good to get back into a teaching environment again. I really, really miss that part of my professional life. You know that when you're teaching, no matter what you're teaching or who you're teaching, you're helping somebody else's life get better. And anybody working in any sort of academic teaching environment, whether it be public school, private grade school, university, or even a teaching as a business like I did over in Japan, you're enriching somebody's life. and are helping them enrich their own life too. And that just makes the world a better place. And that brings a great deal of personal and professional satisfaction to me. And that's kind of why I do these videos in the way I do them. Um, maybe someday I'll get all that fancy camera equipment and take shots from different angles and have well edited videos, not just streams that are recorded and put up. However, for me, the stream is also a way to teach. Not everybody's built these. Not everybody's going to be able to get them. This is an old kit. I don't think they make it anymore. The Gundam Artifacts, they were limited release. Hopefully, you can still get them if you want them. AliExpress is a great way to get them. Yeah, helping somebody else have a more positive experience in their hobby, doing build tutorials, talking about tips and tricks and how I built things and what I realized while building a certain kit that might make it easier for somebody else or more enjoyable experience for someone else. That's also teaching and also makes somebody else's life better, if only in some very small way. But it's the little things that count, right? Helping others. Carrying that old lady's groceries across the street for her. That sort of thing. Especially in today's current climate, I think that's more important than ever. All right, so I found one of my sticky pads came off its backing, so I had to put some sandpaper on it, and this is 800 grit. That's pretty good for GW plastic. I wouldn't go any higher unless you're just doing very light surface running with it, because although the plastic itself is fairly hard to the touch and compared to other plastics out there is pretty durable, it's soft to the knife and scrapes and cuts and sandpapers very easily. So if you're not a little careful with your touch on this, you can really dig into it and cause trouble. So larger grits, your 600s on ups on these smaller figures is something I wouldn't use unless you've got a big sprue nub or something that you need to really crank down before doing your details. And you'll notice today, if you've watched any of my artifact builds, that I'm using my hobby knife in the X-Acto instead of the chisel. This one just works better for me for 40K. It's got these little bits and things, and these blades were punched out. So on one side, there's a little tiny edge that sticks out, and is better for digging and getting the gross scraping done before then switching over to the smooth side to smooth it out and get your finer scraping done. But yeah, these guys have some righteous mold lines. I've been spoiled with the artifacts in that regard. People are messaging me on Discord. What's going on? What do they want to say? Words of encouragement. And also telling me, don't be a dumbass. Quit that overthinking. Which is why I'm here today talking into the void. And we play Chaos Space Marine, so we love the void. And I may as well talk a little bit about the lore I've been working on. I'll tell you the history of this army. So I started 40K back in the end of 2018, maybe early 2019. Probably 2019. After having to sell all of my aquarium equipment due to an emergency move and not being able to take the tank with me where I was going. So I found myself with a fair chunk of change because it was a high-end system, and I needed a hobby. And I thought, well, you know what? There's a Warhammer store in town. Let's go take a look. I had previously gone to local independent stores. Well, there was really only one where I was, and it was mostly comics and cards and games like D&D. And they had a little bit of BattleTech and some, I think, Marvel Crisis Protocol at the time. Maybe HeroClix. I can't really remember. That's a genre that didn't really appeal to me. And I was talking with them about BattleTech and possibly getting back into that after 30-something years. But the way they were talking about it in their group there, the attitude of the place didn't appeal to me. It wasn't a place where I would feel comfortable going and hanging out and playing games with people. So I left. And some point of time later, I can't recall, found out that there was a Warhammer store in town, and having intentionally never gotten into it, at the time I was really into gaming and things, I preferred to spend my money collecting role-playing game books. And GW was expensive even then. Like back in the 90s. Well, yeah, we'll go way back to the 90s. Even then. And I wanted to spend my money on other things, but here I was thinking it would be remembering how much I enjoyed painting up all my BattleTech and playing that game and doing all the miniatures for my D&D parties over the decades. And thought it would be kind of cool to check out Warhammer, see what it was like, and maybe paint some minis. And I had a very positive experience with the manager at that store. He and I had rather similar opinions on gaming, and he had done a lot of work to encourage to build a very encouraging and supportive community at his store. So after my wife and I painted our trial minis, I was like, yeah, she liked it. I liked it. And having something else to do with your spouse is always a good thing. Joint activities and all that. I got us some models. She got some Stormcast because she liked the big golden boys. And I got Tau. And over the course of that year, I was a very good boy and stuck only to buying Tau. I didn't collect multiple armies. I did end up collecting a fairly sizable amount of blue boys. And then came Christmas. And the Secret Santa thing we had there, and somebody, I'm pretty sure it was the manager, or the manager and a couple other people, decided they would be jerks. I say that smiling, and get me that start collecting box for the Chaos Space Marines. Because I'd been looking at them, they were really cool designs, and I thought the aesthetic was neat, and I enjoyed seeing the models, everything that the folks at the store had built. And that was that. It was that really good start collecting box with the Master Possession and Greater Possessed and all of that. And they got that for me, and I will appreciate them for that forevermore, because it forced me, in a manner of speaking, to consider another army. And after playing Tau, not just building and painting, I realized why people talk about how they're not fun to play or play against. I was lucky in that my games were generally against a guy who played guard, so the two armies played well together, or against each other. But yeah, the static nature and or run away and hide and then shoot and be generally non-interactive and then explode in a single phase. I get why people say that's not fun. And having that CSM box where now the army has all phases was good. It was fun. It was a good opportunity, good thing to have that. I still didn't build it, but when I moved to where I am now, a year later, early 2020, I stopped by the local store and they had those two Vengeance Warband kits, army boxes that were still at the $180 2019 price. And yeah, I snagged them. Totally snagged them. Just because I knew the prices would be going up. I didn't know at the time how much they would. Oh my goodness. What's your problem? So I'm glad I picked them up at the time, but I didn't build them. I only built that one start collecting box and played a couple games with it, just really low points games with some folks at the store, and before I stopped playing. However, I kept going. I was there playing against my buddy John, his Death Guard, and my Tau. And of course, every time you go to a store and you feel guilty, like I'm using their stuff and not buying anything, I'd pick up a box every couple weeks and toss it in the someday pile with the other Marines. And then of course, I shouldn't say of course, but being a working professional with enough money, and I probably talked about this in previous streams, but if you're here for the Warhammer stuff and not the Gundam stuff, you may not have heard it. I've just a second. I'm looking at this. I might need to change my camera a bit. Just a moment, folks. Let's see if I can improve picture quality slightly. Maybe if I move it here and like that and like that. Well, that's what we got. So I'm just building a big fat cultist right now, yabbering at you. Where was I? Oh yeah, at the point of being a working professional with disposable income and being able to buy myself the things that I need if I need it. Say I need something for the kitchen. Well, I can go out and buy it. So Christmas and birthdays when I was younger used to be, oh, let's get let's get some free kitchen stuff that I need, or let's get some practical adult things. Or eventually aquarium stuff. But it got to the point where I needed to tell people what to get me for Christmas. And that's when the Chaos Army and some of the Tau really started cranking up. A lot of people talk about piles of shame and buying faster than you can build and all that, and talk about how that's a bad thing, or at least joke about how it's a bad thing. And I kind of disagree with that notion. If you're really trying to play a game and you're really into the game part, what the heck? What just happened? Did I just melt the hand and gun? All right, okay. You stay there. We're not going to glue that yet. Yeah. So if you're really, really into the game and you are focused more on playing than the hobby side of it, absolutely, I can see how getting excited about new things or new armies coming out or new units coming out would cause you to accumulate faster than you can get it on the table, and how that may cause issues with your being able to play the game at various levels. Um, but me, I see this, it's a lifetime hobby. There's no time limit on it. Editions come, editions go, rules change these days all too frequently. But once you've got the model, you've got the model. And you can always play the game with that model as long as you have it. And as long as you have the rule books for old editions, you can always play old editions too. Yeah. Provided you're not going to an official GW event or whatever. There's nothing stopping you and your friends from selecting an edition that you like and sticking with that, or maybe or using older models that perhaps there had been a range update, like say the Emperor's Children, just recently, uh, a range refresh or whatever. Your models are still models and they still work. Perhaps, yeah, maybe you need to. What's going on here? You might need to rebase it, put it on a bigger base, but that's pretty easy. Little MDF circle, some super glue, and you're done. So I generally take my Warhammer hobbying as it comes and goes, as I feel the urge to work on them or not, and if I need to have family tell tell family something to get me so they can get me a gift, and then I put that box in the closet for years. So what? It's still there. I can pull it out, assemble it, paint it, maybe play, maybe not, but the physical object is always there to do the hobbying with at any time, now or in the future. Which has, over the past 5 years now, led to the accumulation of almost 5,000 points of Chaos Space Marines. And I'm just now getting around to building it. Like I bought these two boxes either 2019 or 21, when I went back to visit family and stopped by the store, and they were still there, and I picked them up. I think I bought them right before they went out of stock. I knew they were going out of stock, and I was like, "Yep, time to get them," and then just left them. And then, okay, just a second. So we're gonna do now this one, and that's 16, 17, 18, 19. I can count. And to be quite frank and earnest, In Chicago, I'm Frank, and Dallas, I'm Ernest. That's how the joke went. Not not playing the game or not enjoying the experience when I did play certain modes of the game made it easy to just let it sit and let it be. Just relax, let it be. And then it wasn't until boarding actions. Like I didn't know about boarding actions when it first came out. Where is that arm? Um, there it is. I didn't I didn't realize so much what it was until I heard lore videos on it. I was like, oh, okay. And then I looked into it. It's like, is this the new Psychic Awakening campaign type thing? Is this the new Vigilus campaign type thing? And then I saw what it was. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. I I like the idea behind that. I like the idea of smaller armies with a supposedly fixed mustering rules that will supposedly never change. Supposedly. Um, Inside spaceships. And I like the terrain too. I thought that was really cool because I enjoyed watching people play Space Hulk. I never played the physical game, I played the video games, a few of them, and thought that was cool. I was like, wow, wait a minute. I've got a ton of Chaos Marines and I've got plenty of Tau, and I've even got some Custodians and Necron's friend gave me. Plus those old Space Marine Heroes Terminators that dude sold me one day. And thought, you know what? That's something that I could invest myself in, specifically for the reason that that's a mode of play that never needs to change. And when I saw Tabletop Tactics, the British folks, not the folks out in San Francisco. That's Tabletop Titans. Tabletop Tactics do their video about the boarding actions compendium. That one big giant book where all the rules and all the campaign stuff and all the mustering lists and everything you need to play, barring the dice, models, and terrain, is in there. I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in 40K and grabbed it. So now that's my focus. And I love it because it never needs to change. All of the models I have now are at the same scale. They're current for this edition as far as bases and things go. Well, these cultists might not be. I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But that is the John Grammaticus of my 40K. That's the perpetual. It doesn't need to die. Can always be played for the rest of my life, and there are enough rules and things in there to be able to make slight modifications. To add new things, or maybe if I wanted to play actual Space Hulk, Terminators, red Terminators versus Gene Stealers. The rules are there to be able to make that happen, and the terrain is there to be able to make it happen, and I just need to get myself some Gene Stealers. And figure out how to adapt the philosophy of the board game, Space Hulk, to 40K, but that's not terribly, shouldn't be terribly hard. Yeah, so that's why that got me thinking about my Chaos Boys and wanting to build and just work on them again. Actually put some time in and get things, even if they're gray, get them assembled and be able to play the game. But that's a huge ramble and tangent. Can you tell I listen to Luton? Tangents for the win. That's a huge tangent on my Chaos Space Marine. So now we know why I'm working on them. And let's talk about the story behind them. So if it's not blatantly obvious, I am a storyteller game type person where the spectacle of having a bunch of models on the table playing pretend like you do when playing role-playing games using miniatures is really what I prefer. I will let all of you folks who are into the more gamey aspect of it enjoy that, because that's a pretty big thing too. But after getting the Boarding Actions Compendium and looking at my list, or my my pile of my collection, opening up the closet of collection and taking stock of what all I had, it's like, well, look at that. I've got 3 different boarding patrols already collected. Now I just need to put them together. But I'll tell you, over since 2020, I've tried multiple color schemes for these guys and thought about their background and lore and that, because that's what really gets me excited about an army, is having a head canon for them, some having lore and uh, a paint scheme. And originally, they were going to be Emperor's Children, because I like purple and gold. And of all the Chaos Gods, Slaanesh speaks to me the most because I'm a perfectionist in real life and former musician. So just the general concept of excess speaks to me. Because everything and almost anything, as long as it's wholesome for you to start with, wholesome things in moderation are good for you, but wholesome things in excess are often bad for you. And the idea of that if pride is good. If you take pride in your craft, in your minis, in your profession, in your appearance, um, ambition is good if it drives you to better yourself and your life. Uh, Wine is good with a nice steak, but gluttony is bad. Overindulgence in alcohol has all sorts of negative effects that we all know about, right? But a glass of wine a day is supposed to be good for your heart. And that concept there really, really interests me. So originally it was going to be Emperor's Children because everything about what I knew at the time about Slanesh and the idea of the Emperor's Children, especially their color scheme, interested me. But over time, and I tried a couple different paint schemes, and it just didn't sit. It wasn't just right. It wasn't what I wanted to use for my models that I intended to keep forever. So I put it away and tried again at another point, and it still didn't work. So I put it away again, and then recently, with boarding actions coming out and reviving my interest in the army, and then the more lore for the Emperor's Children, and then the Emperor's Children box itself coming out. Um, I so I was like, wait, you know what? The Third Legion doesn't really appeal to me. I like the idea of Slanesh. I want my army to be a Slaneshi force, but I don't want them to be Emperor's Children or derivatives of. And that also is like, well, shit. Okay, if there goes the color scheme. Um, yeah, so I put it away again. And I forgot to mention that one of the reasons I took my time, my very sweet time with the Chaos Army was I wanted to see what the Emperor's Children release was going to be. So I knew it was coming. The other three armies had come out, or well, at the time it was Death Guard, Thousand Suns, but World Eaters had been heavily hinted and eventually came out. So it was inevitable that Emperor's Children would be released. And I wanted to wait because I intend for this to be the one army that's my one Chaos Army, Chaos Space Marines Army at least. And it's going to be this way forever. I don't want to change it. Don't want to have to repaint everything, get a new color scheme, or mess with things if there's a range refresh and the aesthetic doesn't work, or they get primarisified and size no longer works. So I wanted to be really sure. I wanted to wait for the EC stuff to come out. And those are really, really cool models. They're just not for me. They don't. They scream Emperor's Children, which is great because that's what they are. Um, but they don't scream my army. Um, so once that was sorted, I started looking into other things for the background on this. And the original very, very, very first concept of them were a lot like the Reavers from Firefly and Serenity, if you've seen either of those. Um, really, 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 really nasty people that exist out at the edge of the solar system or whatever system, the system in the world, in the Firefly world. They exist out at the edge of blank space and the inhabited worlds, and then go in and pillage and reave and do all the nasty things that YouTube doesn't like people to say to other people on those planets or in ships that they encounter along the way. And to me, that's the epitome of a fleet-based Chaos Space Marine Army. They're just out there being absolutely horrible, horrible people, torturing and maiming and taking people without consent, and all of that, flaying their skin and making clothes out of it. And I was like, well, okay, that sounds a lot like Drukhari and Night Lords. Well, damn. Okay, should I consider making my warband a Night Lords derivative? The behaviors of those two groups, whether it's the piracy related stuff that the Drukhari do, um, and all the hedonism and Slaaneshi stuff that they still do, torturing and maiming and things, or the things that the Night Lords do. They all fit the theme. But then it's like, okay, well, Night Lords, they're pretty neat, but it seems for the most part they're proper renegades and haven't en masse in large groups succumbed to the Chaos Gods. And I'm I'm enough of a purist and have encountered enough well, actually, people out there, well, actually, the Night Lords wouldn't do that. I don't want to have to deal with somebody, well, actually, my homebrew lore for my army because the Night Lords wouldn't succumb to Slaanesh as an army, as a large force. They would maybe individually, but that's just not the kind of behavior I want to deal with, and decided, okay, well, they're not going to be a Night Lord's derivative. As cool as everything else is, as cool as they are, and as well as everything else about them fits, the idea and theme and philosophy of my warband, my Chaos Army, I just want to avoid that. So I nixed the Night Lord's background. And thanks to Oculus Imperia and Mr. Bones 40K, two of my favorite lore channels, I heard, I was able to get some information about the Raven Guard. And, is this? Hold on a second. That's a piece from a different kit. Yeah, finding out about the Raven Guard and the original Terran Legion. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Slavers and things like that. And they're still a bit on the sneaky kinda terror troop type thing, but having the extra background of being slavers and tyrants that Kurz ended up hating and rejecting and exiling. Like, ah ha ha ha, wait a minute. There we go. There's a really good explanation for my army, and it fit with some of the lore that I had already kind of come up with. Your father hated you. Your emperor forsook you. Your cousins despised you. They forced you out into the black, where none would take you, where you would be out of their sight, causing them no shame. There is one who loves you. There is one who sees what you do and is not ashamed. Slanesh. And that's what it was. So my Phantoms of Desolation, Phantasma di Desolatinari, are Raven Guard. They're taken from the original Terran legionnaires who were exiled and or sent to Gate 42 to be annihilated, and possibly picked up some survivors of Istvan 5. Yeah, 3 was when the loyalist chaos guys were killed. Survivors from the drop site massacre, and possibly inductee. I like the idea of some original Terran legionnaires intentionally going through and recruiting inductee during the heresy, because they're already crazy and insane, and all of these things that fit my idea of the army. They were despised by the regular legionnaires for not being real legionnaires and being faulty and having their issues and stuff, and just kind of being mass produced. And the idea that maybe they had some weird mutation on top of the scar. Was it the Sable brand? That led them to be more susceptible to chaos, and or maybe some just their general experiences led them to be like, yeah, the Imperium can go pound sand. we're going to go off and do our own thing. Hey, brothers, how are you? You never met us, but we're your big older brothers. We've been around for a really long time, and Daddy didn't like us very much either and sent us away. But we want you. We think you're great. Come join us as we go do our own thing around the galaxy, taking our revenge on those filthy loyalists, those blind followers of the corpse god. Yeah, that was that. That's the deal there. And then recently, like very recently, I've done some paint tests and figured out a cool scheme. I didn't have a name for them until I did the paint scheme, and it ended up being uh, Eshin Gray over black primer. Here we go. There's one. And then I had put Lupercal Green over that, which I like that blue. You can kind of see it. I liked the blue. I was like, wait, what? Night? Why do I have this Night Haunt Gloom paint? Was that to use for lenses and things? So I put some of that over the Lupercal Green, and it looked great. And it also looked kind of ghostly. So, not surprisingly, but the whole effect of the color scheme combined, everything together, the gray, the blue green, and then the not really wash filter of the Night Haunt Gloom over. I was like, ooh, ghosts. Okay, so this is a fleet-based warband that just comes out of nowhere, descends upon a world, a space station, or they just happen to be tracking this fleet and absolutely destroys them. That fit really well, just like ghosts, phantoms, and of course having to translate low Gothic English into high Gothic Latin. Yeah, the Phantasma Desolationari. Oh my god, my Latin's terrible now. Phantoms. The the Ghosts of Desolation was what it originally had been, but I didn't like ghosts. And then spirits, no. Phantom. Ooh. Um, that sounded a little bit less middle school edgelord fanfic than the ghosts or spirits, but only slightly because they are Chaos Space Marines and they are Raven Guard derived, not successors. Or so yeah, that's that. That's the basis of my army's lore. And oh, the one of the other things that pushed me away from doing Emperor's Children were the characters. The characters are cool. The actual characters themselves in books and things, they're pretty neat. I just don't like having named characters in my armies. There would be no reason for Fulgrim or Lucius to be in my army, to be fighting with them. ever. Never, ever. But the trend of having big fancy Primarchs or big fancy Chapter Masters and all these named characters, Abaddon, etc., as part of the army these days is a thing. So when those two came out and they were in the box, or well, Lucius was in the box, Fulgrim was separate. It's like, yeah, no, not. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna play a force where there is a lore named character in it, or closely associated with it, like Fabius Bile or whatever. That's just not. So I had to make my own characters, and I've got a bunch of them. I got 5 of them, I think, at this point. Okay, so here's one of those steps where I am going to use a high grit sandpaper because there's a sprue nub down here that's just not going away, and I don't want to pull out my good scribing tools to fix it, to fix something on the bottom of a cultist gun. And of course it's right here, but that's the 0.1 mil. I could detail. Want to see me detail? Exciting stuff. Yeah, so there was the story of that, and eventually one of these years, probably sooner rather than later, but however, once they're all painted up and done, what's this? And I can do an army showcase. I will. It's one of the coolest things for me in 40K hobbying and social media is seeing people do an army showcase where they discuss the lore of their army. Sorcerer Dave did a few many years ago for his armies, for his not world eaters. Oh my gosh, Lorgars, folks, word bearers, army, and his Imperial Guard army and all that, and narrated it, voiced it in character, in world, and then I thought that was just the coolest thing. So that's one of these days something I'm going to do, I think. And is this the leg for this guy? Looks like it. But that's all dependent on me getting everything actually assembled and painted. Okay, so that's 12, 13, 14, 15. We're getting close, folks. I may have to cut this short, though. My throat is getting rather raw, and I'm starting to get hungry. I've been up since my usual 3 o'clock a.m., and it's 11 o'clock now. And I'm just about out of water. So I think I will call that there. Let me just get the rest of these cut out. 13, 14, 15. 13, 14, 15, 12. Cool. That's done. There's one more left on the sprue after this. So we'll pick this up maybe tomorrow. Definitely at a later date, possibly tomorrow. And in this case, that would be February 6th, 2025. and make more progress towards getting the lower decks boarding patrol made. Um, yeah. So y'all take care. Thank you for watching this. I have been Phil, the miniature model maker. We've assembled a couple Chaos Cultists from the 40K Blackstone Fortress Cultists of the Abyss box. And remember, this is a hobby. If it doesn't bring you joy and you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Be good to yourselves. Bye-bye.